Commander Jae-wook stared at the bright screen in front of him. The numbers were changing fast and his heart was beating even faster. After 300 years, humanity was finally going to break free from their prison. Status report, he said to his crew on the bridge of the Terra Nova. Dr. So-min looked up from her console. Her fingers moved quickly over the alien symbols that they had learned to read after decades of study. The barrier is weakening, Commander. Our calculations were right. The energy field around our solar system is failing. Engineer Taeho wiped sweat from his face as he worked on the strange machine that powered their ship. It was built from pieces of crashed alien ships that had been found on Earth over the years. Nobody knew why those ships had crashed, but humans had learned to use their technology. The FTL drive is holding steady. It's not pretty, but it works. Captain Hyejin stood behind them all, watching the main screen that showed space outside their ship. For her whole life, she had dreamed of seeing what was beyond Earth's solar system. Her grandmother had told her stories about the lights in the sky that appeared and disappeared. Now she knew those lights were alien ships watching them from the other side of an invisible wall. There, So-min said suddenly, I'm picking up massive energy readings from the next star system. There are cities out there. Huge ones. The bridge fell quiet. Everyone knew this moment would come, but it still felt impossible. Humanity was not alone. They had never been alone. Someone had built a wall around their home and kept them locked inside. Why? Whispered Communications Officer Yoonji. Why did they trap us here? Nobody answered because nobody knew. The old records from Earth talked about strange visitors who came long ago, but they always left quickly. Then one day they stopped coming entirely. Scientists had discovered the energy barrier 50 years ago, but it had taken this long to build a ship that could break through it. The Terra Nova shook as it pushed through the failing barrier. Lights flashed across the hull and strange sounds echoed through the ship. Then suddenly everything went quiet. We're through, Taeho said softly. We're actually through. On the other side of the galaxy, alarms were screaming. Council Prime Zillith felt her crystal body vibrating with fear as she read the emergency message. The words made no sense. The Deathworld quarantine had been broken. But that was impossible. Nothing could survive on that terrible planet. And even if something did, it could never develop technology advanced enough to break their strongest barriers. Call an emergency session, she commanded her assistants. Alert all species. The impossible has happened. Within hours, representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Council chamber. They came from beautiful worlds with perfect weather, gentle animals, and clean water. Their planets had never known earthquakes, storms, or dangerous creatures. They had evolved in paradise, and they could not imagine any other way to live. War Leader Kexthor of the Urgyani slammed his 6 arms on the table. This must be a system error. Nothing lives on the Deathworld. We've scanned it for centuries. It's covered in poisonous water, filled with creatures that eat each other, and the very ground shakes and splits open. The air itself is toxic. The scans don't lie, said Chief Strategist Morden quietly. Something has broken through. Something that calls itself human. The word sent shivers through the assembled aliens. They had heard whispers about the creatures on the quarantined world. The old record spoke of beings that drank poison for pleasure, kept predators as pets, and seemed to enjoy living in dangerous conditions. The first scouts who had visited that world 300 years ago had returned with stories so terrifying that the Council had immediately built the quarantine field. What do they want? Asked Council Prime Zillith. They're sending a message, reported Communications Specialist Velsan. They say they come in peace. They want to trade and learn about other species. They call their world Earth, and they say it's beautiful. The council chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Beautiful? That world of storms and earthquakes and deadly creatures was beautiful? Back on the Terra Nova, Ambassador Dong-hyun was preparing humanity's first message to the galaxy. He had spent years studying the few alien languages they had learned from the crashed ships. He wanted to make a good first impression. We are humans from the planet Earth, he practiced saying in the alien tongue. We wish to meet you and learn from you. We bring gifts of friendship and hope for peace between our peoples. It sounded friendly enough to him. He had no idea that every word was being analyzed by terrified aliens who were trying to figure out how to surrender to what they assumed were unstoppable conquerors. Captain Hyejin made the decision to approach the nearest star system slowly and peacefully. She ordered all weapon systems to be powered down, though the Terra Nova barely had any weapons at all. Humans had built the ship for exploration, not war. Take us to the energy signatures that So-min detected, she ordered. Nice and easy. We don't want to scare anyone. If she had known that every alien in the galaxy was already scared, she might have approached things differently. The Terra Nova moved toward the Kethmar trading station, a massive structure that housed thousands of aliens from dozens of species. It was a place of commerce and culture, where peaceful beings came to trade goods and share knowledge. Station Commander Rilhan was having a normal day until his sensors detected an incoming ship. At first he thought it might be pirates or raiders, but then his computers identified the ship's origin point. It was coming from the Deathworld. Rilhan felt his 3 hearts stop beating. He had heard the old stories, but he had always assumed they were myths. No one could actually survive on that terrible planet. Yet here was proof that something not only survived there, but had built ships and learned to travel between stars. He immediately sent out emergency signals to every ship in the area. Code Black Emergency. Deathworld entities approaching. Request immediate military support, but it was too late to run. The human ship was already too close. As the Terra Nova approached the trading station, Dr. So-Min was excited to see her first aliens. She had spent her whole life studying Earth's biology, and now she would finally meet creatures from other worlds. She had prepared gifts and samples to share, including some of Earth's most beautiful flowers and her grandmother's homemade cookies. She had no idea that the flowers were toxic to most alien life forms, and that the cookies contained enough substances to kill an entire station full of peaceful herbivores. Engineer Taeho was looking forward to seeing how other species built their technology. He had tools ready to help with any repairs or maintenance that might be needed. His toolkit contained acids, electrical equipment, and heavy machinery that he handled as easily as a child's toys. To the watching aliens, it looked like a mobile weapons arsenal operated by creatures immune to industrial hazards. The Terra Nova docked with the trading station as gently as possible. Captain Heejin wanted to make sure their first contact went perfectly. She had no way of knowing that on the other side of the docking bay, hundreds of aliens were preparing for what they believed would be their final moments. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and the first human stepped onto an alien space station. Lieutenant Kyung-soo walked through the doorway with easy, confident steps. He was wearing a simple uniform and carrying basic equipment, but to the hidden cameras watching him, he looked like death itself had come calling. Station Commander Rilhan watched the security feed from his hiding place behind thick blast doors. The creature from the Deathworld moved like a predator. Even though it seemed to be trying to walk casually, its eyes swept the corridor, taking in every detail. Those eyes had clearly evolved to hunt dangerous prey in terrible conditions. "It's so calm," whispered Security Chief Yunkol. "Look how it moves in our heavy gravity like it's nothing." They didn't know that their heavy gravity was actually lighter than Earth's normal conditions. To Kyung-soo, walking on the station felt like bouncing on a moon. Dr. So-Min followed behind him, carrying a sealed container of gifts. She smiled at the security cameras, not knowing that her expression was being interpreted as a predator showing its teeth before an attack. Her container held flowers, food samples, and medical supplies from Earth. To her, they were friendship gifts. To the aliens analyzing the contents, they registered as biological weapons, industrial toxins, and combat drugs. "The medical scanner is malfunctioning," reported Healer Yundal from the station's medical bay. She had been trying to scan the approaching humans for diseases, but her equipment kept giving impossible readings. "It says they have living bacteria colonies inside their bodies. That should kill them instantly." "It says their bones contain radioactive elements," added her assistant, "and their stomachs are full of acid strong enough to dissolve metal." Healer Yundal felt faint. These creatures were living weapons, immune to diseases and toxins that would kill any normal being in seconds. How had such monsters evolved? What kind of terrible world could create such things? Engineer Taeho was the third human to enter the station. He immediately noticed that some of the lights were flickering, and the air recycling system was making strange sounds. Being a helpful person, he approached the nearest maintenance panel to offer assistance. The panel was protected by warning signs in 17 different languages, all saying the same thing: danger, lethal electrical current, authorized personnel only. Taeho couldn't read the alien writing, but he recognized the symbols for electricity and danger. On Earth, those warnings usually meant "be careful" rather than "this will definitely kill you." He opened his toolkit and began working on the problem. Maintenance worker Peakwall, watched in horror as the creature from the Deathworld reached directly into the electrical system with its bare hands. The current flowing through those wires could kill a dozen Pequol's people instantly, but the human just worked calmly, occasionally getting small electrical shocks that made it blink, but didn't seem to cause any real harm. "It's immune to electricity," Pequol whispered into his communicator. "The legends are true. They're invincible." Captain Hyojin entered the station last, looking around with wonder and excitement. She had dreamed of this moment her entire life. The station was beautiful, with curved walls and soft lighting that made everything look peaceful and elegant. She could see aliens hiding in the shadows, watching her nervously, and she assumed they were just shy about meeting a new species. "Hello," she called out in the alien language that humanity had learned. "We come in peace. We're very happy to meet you." Her words echoed through the station's communication system, reaching every hiding alien, but her voice, which sounded friendly to human ears, carried undertones that triggered fear responses in creatures who had evolved as prey animals. To them, it sounded like a predator announcing that it was ready to hunt. Station Commander Rilhan finally worked up the courage to activate the communication system. His voice shook as he spoke. "Welcome, beings from the Deathworld. We surrender. Please don't hurt us." The humans looked at each other in confusion. Captain Hyojin tilted her head, trying to understand. "Surrender? We don't want you to surrender. We just want to be friends." "Friends?" Rilhan's voice went up several octaves. In his language, the word for friend was the same as the word for those who serve the victor. He thought the humans were demanding that his people become their servants. Dr. So-min stepped forward with her container of gifts. She opened it carefully, revealing the beautiful flowers she had brought from Earth's gardens. To her, they were symbols of life and beauty. To the station's biological scanners, they registered as toxic plants that could kill through skin contact. "These are from our world," she said happily. "They're very beautiful and they smell wonderful." The aliens watching through cameras saw her holding what appeared to be biological weapons while describing them as beautiful. This confirmed their worst fears about the Deathworld creatures. They found beauty in things that could kill. Healer Yundel was monitoring the situation from her medical station when she noticed something that made her panic even more. The humans were breathing the station's air without any protection. The atmosphere on the station was designed to be safe for most species, but it contained trace amounts of gases that were toxic to many life forms. The humans were not only breathing it safely, but they seemed to be enjoying it. "They're processing our air like it's harmless," she reported. "Their biology is adapting to our environment in real time. They're not just immune to toxins, they're immune to everything." Lieutenant Kyung-soo noticed that some of the aliens seemed scared and tried to reassure them. He moved toward a group of small furry creatures who were huddled behind a cargo container. His intention was to show them that humans were friendly, so he smiled and moved slowly. But to prey animals, an approaching predator that moved slowly while showing its teeth was displaying classic hunting behavior. The furry aliens fainted from terror. "I think we're scaring them," Kyung-soo said to Captain Hyojin. "Why would they be scared?" she asked. "We're being as friendly as possible." Engineer Taeho had finished fixing the electrical system and moved on to the air recycling unit. The problem was obvious to him. A bearing was worn out and needed to be replaced. He opened his toolkit and pulled out the replacement part, along with the tools needed to install it. The tools included solvents that could dissolve most materials, cutting devices that could slice through reinforced metal, and industrial adhesives that could bond anything permanently. To Taeho, these were just normal maintenance supplies. To the watching aliens, they looked like a portable destruction kit that could take apart their entire station. Maintenance worker Pequol watched in fascination as the human worked. The creature handled substances that would burn through Pequol's protective clothing in seconds. It used tools that required safety equipment Pequol's people didn't even possess. And it did all of this while chatting casually with the other humans, as if working with deadly materials was as normal as breathing. "How long do they live?" Pequol asked Healer Yundal through the communication system. "According to their biology, they should die in minutes from any number of factors," Yundal replied. "But they seem to live for decades while maintaining this impossible biology. They're either immortal, or they regenerate so quickly that damage doesn't matter." Dr. So-min had noticed that the alien seemed fascinated by her container of gifts, so she decided to share some food from Earth. She pulled out a small package of her grandmother's cookies and offered them to the nearest alien. The alien was Trader Nimzal, who dealt in rare goods from across the galaxy. He had survived dangerous negotiations and handled volatile materials, but he had never been offered food by a creature from a Deathworld. The scanner in his hand showed that the small, innocent-looking items contained dozens of chemical compounds that registered as industrial toxins. "It's trying to poison me," he whispered to his assistant. Dr. Somin saw him hesitate and misunderstood his fear. She thought he might have dietary restrictions, so she pulled out another package. "These are different. They're made with chocolate. Almost everyone likes chocolate." To Nimzal's scanner, chocolate registered as a deadly alkaloid that could stop his heart in seconds. The human was now offering him a choice between two different types of poison. While smiling in a way that showed all of its predatory teeth, Captain Hyejin was getting frustrated with the communication problems. She could see that the aliens were afraid, but she couldn't understand why. Humans had come in peace, offering gifts and friendship. They had disabled their weapons and approached slowly and carefully. "Maybe they don't understand our intentions," she said to her crew. "Let's show them that we're not dangerous." She activated her communicator and sent a message to the Terra Nova. "Dong Hyun, please send our cultural database to the station. Maybe if they see our art and music, they'll understand that we're peaceful." Ambassador Dong Hyun transmitted humanity's cultural collection to the station's computers. It included images of Earth's most beautiful locations, recordings of peaceful music, and examples of human art that celebrated life and nature. The aliens who reviewed the file saw landscapes that looked like scenes from horror stories. Mountains that could crush cities if they moved, oceans deep enough to swallow entire civilizations, forests full of creatures that ate each other. Junior Council member Lysara had always been different from the other Thilni. While her people preferred safety and routine, she was curious about the unknown. While they avoided anything dangerous, she was fascinated by mysteries. This difference had made her unpopular among her own species, but it also made her the only alien in the galaxy who was willing to actually study the humans instead of running from them. She watched the security recordings from Nexus Station over and over again, not looking for weapons or threats, but trying to understand behavior. What she saw confused her at first, then intrigued her, and finally convinced her that everyone else had made a terrible mistake. "They're not acting like conquerors," she told her research assistant, though she kept her voice quiet. Expressing doubt about the human threat could end her career, or even get her arrested for supporting the enemy. She watched Ambassador Dong Hyun's face during the surrender ceremony. He looked genuinely confused and upset when Council Prime Zalith offered him control of the galaxy. A conqueror would have been pleased or at least satisfied. Instead, the human looked like someone who had been badly misunderstood. She studied the cultural exchange videos more carefully. Artist Minho's paintings showed peaceful scenes, not battle plans. His explanations were about beauty and seasons, not warfare and conquest. Chef Haewon smiled while cooking, tasted her own food, and seemed genuinely happy to share it with others. Musician Jiwoo played with the same expression humans showed during other pleasant activities. Most importantly, she noticed something that everyone else had missed. The humans showed emotional responses that indicated distress at being feared. Lysara made a decision that could have gotten her executed for treason. She sent a private message to Dr. Somin, asking for a direct conversation about human biology and culture. Dr. Somin was delighted to receive the message. Finally, an alien who wanted to learn rather than surrender, she immediately agreed to meet with Lysara in a private communication session. "I want to understand," Lysara said carefully. "Your world is described as a death world, but you call it beautiful. Your food is detected as poison, but you eat it happily. Your body survives things that should kill you, but you seem fragile in emotional ways. Nothing makes sense." Dr. Somin laughed, which startled Lysara until she realized it was an expression of happiness rather than aggression. "Earth is beautiful," Somin explained. "Yes, it's dangerous compared to your worlds, but that danger created diversity and strength. Our food isn't poison to us because we evolved with it. Our bodies aren't invulnerable. They're just adapted to our environment." She showed Lysara pictures of Earth that weren't in the official databases. Children playing in gardens, families having picnics near lakes, elderly humans feeding birds in parks. Artists painting landscapes not because they were military objectives, but because they found them inspiring. "We don't want to conquer anyone," So Min said gently. "We just spent 300 years alone, wondering if we were the only intelligent life in the universe. Finding all of you was the most wonderful thing that ever happened to us." Meanwhile, other humans were having their own breakthrough moments with individual aliens who were too desperate or curious to stay afraid. Station maintenance worker Peakwall had been watching engineer Tae-ho work for days. The human fixed things that had been broken for years, improved systems that Peakwall's people had thought were as good as they could get, and did it all while humming cheerful songs, finally. Peakwall worked up the courage to ask a question. "Why do you help us? What do you want from us?" Tae-ho looked surprised. "I don't want anything. I like fixing things and your equipment needs help. Where I come from, neighbors help each other." He showed Peakwall pictures of his home on Earth, his workshop where he repaired appliances for his community without charging money, his garden, where he grew vegetables that he shared with anyone who needed them, his elderly mother who baked bread for the whole neighborhood. "This is what humans do," Tae-ho explained. "We help each other. We thought you might want to be part of that." Cultural archivist Nemwal had been assigned to study the human art for signs of propaganda and psychological warfare. Instead, she found herself moved by the beauty and emotion in the paintings. The images showed a species that had learned to find joy in difficult circumstances, hope in dark times and beauty in unexpected places. She contacted artist Minho directly, asking him to explain his work. "This painting shows a storm," she said, indicating one of his pieces. "Yes," Minho replied, "but look at what comes after the storm. The flowers that bloom when the rain stops. The rainbow that appears when the sun comes out. The feeling of hope that grows stronger after surviving something difficult." Nemwal studied the painting again and saw something she had missed before. It wasn't a celebration of destruction. It was a celebration of resilience and renewal. Child tender Xyleth had been terrified when musician Jiwoo first played his music. But she was responsible for caring for the young of her species, and she noticed that some of the smaller children seemed calmer when the human music played softly in the background. She sent a cautious message asking if Jiwoo could play something specifically designed to help children sleep. Jiwoo responded immediately with a gentle lullaby, the same one his grandmother had sung to him. Xyleth played it for her children and watched them relax and smile. For the first time, she began to understand that human music could express love and comfort, not just warfare and intimidation. These small breakthrough moments were happening across the galaxy, but they were being overshadowed by the continued panic of the governments and militaries. Lysara knew she had to do something dramatic to break through the fear. She made a proposal that shocked everyone who heard it. She wanted to visit Earth. "That's suicide," Council Prime Zilith told her. "Nothing can survive on the Deathworld except the humans themselves." "Then let me prove that," Lysara replied. "If I die, you'll know the humans are as dangerous as you think. If I survive, maybe we can finally learn the truth." Captain Hyojin was surprised to receive the request, but she was thrilled at the opportunity to show an alien what Earth was really like. She invited not just Lysara, but any other aliens who were brave enough to make the journey. In the end, 4 aliens volunteered: Lysara, Peakwall, Nemwal, and Xyleth. They were the ones who had already begun to see humans differently, and they were willing to risk their lives to learn more. The journey to Earth took several days, and during that time, the aliens lived alongside the human crew. They watched Dr. Somin teach her daughter about biology by showing her flowers and insects. They saw Engineer Tae-ho help his elderly father with physical therapy exercises. They observed Captain Hyojin reading bedtime stories to her son over video calls with Earth. "They have families," Xyleth whispered to the others. "They love their children the same way we do." When they finally arrived at Earth, the aliens were prepared for a world of horror and death. Instead, they found themselves looking at a planet covered in blue oceans, white clouds, and green continents. The ship landed in a garden in Seoul, where Captain Hyojin's family was waiting to meet them. The aliens emerged from the ship wearing full environmental protection suits, expecting to encounter toxic air and deadly radiation. Instead, they found themselves in a peaceful garden filled with flowers, with the sound of children laughing in the distance and the smell of something delicious cooking in a nearby kitchen. Lysara was the first to remove her helmet. The air was clean and fresh, with no trace of the toxins their scanners had predicted. The gravity was strong but manageable. The sunlight was warm but not burning. "This is Earth?" she asked in wonder. Captain Hyejin nodded, smiling as she watched her young son approach the aliens with curious excitement rather than fear. "This is my home. This is where all humans come from." Peekwol watched Engineer Taeho's grandmother working in her vegetable garden, growing food with her own hands instead of using machines. The old woman offered them fresh vegetables from her garden, smiling despite their strange appearance. Namwal saw human children playing games that required cooperation and imagination. Their play was competitive but not violent, creative but not destructive. She realized that human culture valued both strength and kindness. Xylith listened to mothers singing to their babies, fathers telling stories to their children, and grandparents sharing wisdom with young adults. The emotional bonds between humans were as strong and caring as anything she had seen in her own species. "We were wrong," Lysara said finally. "We were completely wrong about everything." She activated her communicator and sent a message to the Galactic Council. The message was simple but revolutionary. They're not conquerors. They're not monsters. They're just people who learned to be strong because their world taught them they had to be, and now they want to share that strength with us, not use it against us. The response to her message was explosive. Some aliens refused to believe her. Others demanded her immediate rescue from what they assumed was human mind control. But a few, like the ones who had been quietly communicating with humans on their own, began to speak up with their own observations. 3 days after first contact, Ambassador Donghyun received an invitation that filled him with excitement. The Galactic Council wanted to meet with humanity's representatives at Nexus Station, the most important diplomatic facility in known space. "This is it," he told Captain Hyejin as they prepared for the journey. "Our chance to join the galactic community. I've prepared a cultural exchange program that should help them understand who we really are." Captain Hyejin nodded enthusiastically. She had chosen a small delegation of humans who represented the best of Earth's culture and values. Artist Minho would share humanity's love of beauty through his paintings. Chef Haiwan would demonstrate their hospitality through food. Musician Jiwoo would show their emotional depth through song. They had no idea that on the other side of the galaxy, the same meeting was being planned as a desperate attempt to negotiate surrender terms before the inevitable human conquest. Nexus Station was the largest artificial structure ever built, a gleaming city in space that housed representatives from every major species. As the human shuttle approached the docking bay, Ambassador Donghyun marveled at its beauty and complexity. "Look at what they've accomplished," he said to his companions. "We have so much to learn from them." Inside the station, War Leader Kexthor was positioning his heaviest battle units around the diplomatic meeting room. Science Leader Kelthara had installed every possible scanner and detector, hoping to gather intelligence about human capabilities. Council Prime Xylith had prepared what she believed would be the most generous surrender offer in galactic history. The cultural exchange began in the station's main auditorium. Ambassador Donghyun had insisted that the meeting be open and friendly, with plenty of opportunities for both species to share their achievements. Artist Minho was the first to present his work. He had brought some of his most peaceful paintings, including gentle landscapes of Korean mountains and quiet scenes of rural life. To him, these images represented everything beautiful about Earth. The assembled aliens looked at the paintings and saw landscapes of impossible danger. Mountains that could trigger avalanches or earthquakes at any moment. Forests filled with creatures that competed in deadly struggles for survival. Skies that could unleash storms capable of destroying cities. "This one shows a typical spring day," Minho explained, pointing to a painting of cherry blossoms blooming near a small village. "It's the season when everything comes to life after the cold winter." The aliens studying the image saw what appeared to be a biological weapon deployment. The blossoms were clearly some kind of airborne spores, and the village was positioned to maximize the spread of whatever toxins they carried. Military analyst Vrakhan whispered to her colleagues, "They're showing us their terraforming capabilities. They can make any world look peaceful while filling it with hidden dangers." Chef Haiwan was excited to share some of Earth's most beloved foods. She had prepared a selection of mild, family-friendly dishes that she thought would be safe for alien biology. The meal included fresh vegetables, rice, mild curry, green tea, and chocolate cake for dessert. She set up her cooking demonstration in the station's main gallery, where hundreds of aliens could watch safely from behind protective barriers. The barriers had been installed because the station's medical staff had analyzed the human food and declared it too dangerous for close exposure. "This is kimchi," Haiwan explained cheerfully, holding up a jar of fermented vegetables. "It's very good for your digestive system. The fermentation process creates healthy bacteria that help your body process food." The aliens watching through their scanners saw her, casually handling a container full of aggressive microorganisms that could potentially consume any organic matter they encountered. To species that sterilized all their food, the idea of deliberately eating living bacteria was terrifying. "And this is gochujang," she continued, showing them a container of chili paste. "It adds flavor and heat to many of our dishes." The station's chemical analyzers immediately identified the paste as containing capsaicin, which registered as a potent chemical weapon. Haiwan was describing a substance that could cause severe pain and tissue damage as if it were a pleasant seasoning. Medical Chief Yundar watched in horror as the human chef tasted each dish directly, consuming substances that should have killed her instantly. "She's immune to her own biological weapons," he reported to the council. "She can eat poison and call it delicious." Musician Jiwoo had brought his guitar and a selection of songs that represented different aspects of human emotion. He started with a gentle lullaby that his grandmother had sung to him as a child, followed by a folk song about love and loss, and finished with an upbeat melody about hope and friendship. To human ears, the music was beautiful and moving. To alien psychology, it sounded like something much more disturbing. Species that had evolved as prey animals heard the deep bass notes as the approach of predators. The complex rhythms reminded them of heartbeats accelerating during pursuit. The emotional intensity suggested a species that was comfortable with strong feelings like anger, passion, and aggression. "It's psychological warfare," reported cultural analyst Nextari. "They're using sound to trigger our fear responses. This is how they weaken enemy populations before conquest." The most terrifying moment came when Jiwoo played a traditional percussion piece, using drums and other instruments that required him to strike them with force. The aliens watched him hit the drums repeatedly, creating loud rhythmic sounds that echoed through the station. To them, it looked like he was demonstrating weapon techniques while creating intimidating noise. The fact that he smiled while doing it convinced them that humans found violence enjoyable. Ambassador Dong Hyun was confused by the aliens' reactions to their cultural presentations. Every time they shared something beautiful from Earth, the aliens seemed to become more frightened. He decided to try a more direct approach. "Perhaps there's been some misunderstanding," he said to Council Prime Zillith. "We're not here to conquer or dominate anyone. We just want to be part of the galactic community. We want to learn and grow together." His words were translated and analyzed by the best linguists in the galaxy. The phrase "learn and grow together" was interpreted as assimilate your species into our collective. The concept of being part of the community sounded like complete integration under human control. Council Prime Zillith felt her crystal structure flickering with despair. The humans were so confident in their power that they weren't even bothering with complex negotiations. They were simply stating their intention to take over everything. "What do you want from us?" she asked finally. "What are your terms?" Ambassador Dong Hyun was surprised by the question. "We don't have terms. We just want friendship. Maybe we could start with some simple trade agreements. We could exchange art, music, food, and scientific knowledge." To the aliens, this sounded like a demand for complete cultural surrender. The humans wanted to replace alien art with their terrifying images of Deathworld landscapes. They wanted to replace alien food with their biological weapons disguised as cuisine. They wanted to replace alien science with their impossible technologies. The situation became even more frightening when Security Chief Kyung-soo had to deal with an unexpected crisis. A group of extremist aliens, led by faction leader Vakrul, had decided that the only way to save the galaxy was to kill the human representatives before they could complete their conquest. The attack came during the cultural exchange, when the humans were most relaxed and vulnerable. 6 armed aliens burst into the auditorium, carrying energy weapons and wearing full combat armor. Kyung-soo reacted automatically, using basic self-defense techniques that any human child would learn in school. He disarmed the first attacker with a simple joint lock, knocked out the second with a gentle tap that wouldn't even bruise a human, and subdued the remaining 4 without breaking a sweat. To the watching aliens, It looked like a demonstration of impossible combat skills. The human had moved faster than their eyes could follow, showing strength that could easily break their bones, and reflexes that could react to multiple attackers simultaneously. Most terrifying of all, he had done it while taking several energy weapon hits that should have killed him instantly. The weapons had no effect, whispered military observer Telcon. He absorbed direct energy blasts and kept fighting. The truth was that the alien weapons were designed for creatures with much more fragile biology. The energy output that would kill most aliens was roughly equivalent to a mild electric shock for a human. Kyungsoo had barely noticed being shot, but the aliens saw a creature that was immune to their most powerful weapons, capable of defeating multiple armored opponents without effort, and calm enough during combat to avoid seriously injuring his attackers. To them, it proved that humans were the ultimate warrior species. The failed assassination attempt convinced the remaining skeptics that resistance was futile. If humans could casually defeat armed attacks while giving cultural presentations, what hope did the galaxy have in actual warfare? Council Prime Zillith made the decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She approached Ambassador Dong Hyun with the most complete surrender offer in galactic history. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in 300 years. Representatives from every known species crowded into the Great Chamber, their different forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. But despite their differences, they all shared the same expression of terror. Council Prime Zillith's crystalline body flickered with nervous energy as she called the session to order. Her voice, normally calm and musical, cracked with fear. "We have received the reports from Kethmar Station. The situation is worse than our most terrible predictions." The massive display screen at the front of the chamber showed footage from the trading station. The assembled aliens watched in horrified silence as the human called Taiho casually handled substances that would kill most of them instantly. They saw the human called Somin offering food that registered as deadly poison to every known biological scanner. "Look at how they move," whispered war leader Kexthor. His 6 arms shook as he pointed at the screen. "They show no fear of anything. They walk through our heaviest gravity like they're floating. They breathe toxic atmosphere like it's pleasant air." Chief Strategist Mordun stood up slowly, his ancient body creaking. He had lived for 800 years and had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations, but nothing had prepared him for this. "I have run every possible combat simulation," he announced. "Every scenario ends the same way. Total defeat." The chamber erupted in frightened whispers. Species that had never agreed on anything were suddenly united in their terror. "How is that possible?" demanded Battle Commander Vexcala of the warlike Zontar. "Our combined fleets include millions of ships. We have weapons that can destroy planets." Morden activated his own display screen showing the results of his analysis. "Their biology makes them immune to most of our weapons. Toxins that would kill us don't affect them. Radiation that would cook our flesh is something they live with naturally. Gravity that would crush us is lighter than their home conditions." The screen showed comparison charts that made the assembled aliens gasp in horror. The strongest member of the most powerful military species in the galaxy was physically weaker than an average human child. The most toxic Deathworld in known space had an environment that was milder than a human vacation resort. "But surely their technology is primitive," said science leader Kelthera. "They've been isolated for centuries. They can't possibly match our advanced science." Morden shook his head sadly. "Their technology is different from ours, but it's not primitive. We build our tools to work in safe, controlled conditions. They build theirs to work in environments that would destroy our most advanced equipment. A human maintenance kit contains tools that could take apart our strongest military vehicles." On the screen, they watched engineer Tejo repair the station's life support system using methods that looked like controlled destruction. He handled corrosive chemicals without protective gear, worked with electrical systems that could kill a dozen aliens, and used mechanical force that could crush the bones of most species. "He's fixing our equipment better than our own engineers could," admitted Station Commander Rilhan through the communication link. "And he's doing it while exposed to hazards that should kill him instantly." Council Prime Xylith felt her crystal structure dimming with despair. "What do they want from us? What are their demands?" Communications specialist Velsan consulted her files nervously. According to their messages, they want cultural exchange, trade agreements, and scientific cooperation. They say they hope for lasting friendship between our peoples. The chamber fell silent. These words, which should have been comforting, somehow made everything more terrifying. Cultural exchange, repeated war leader Kex Thor slowly. They want to change us into something like them. Trade agreements, added Battle Commander Vex Kala. They want to spread their Deathworld goods throughout the galaxy. Scientific cooperation, finished science leader Kelthera with a shudder. They want to teach us their impossible sciences. The implications hit everyone at the same time. The humans weren't planning a quick conquest. They were planning a slow transformation of the entire galaxy. They would share their deadly food, their dangerous art, their terrifying music, and their impossible science until every world became like their Deathworld home. Back on the Kethmar station, the human crew was getting more confused by the minute. Every attempt at friendship seemed to make the aliens more scared. Captain Hyojin had been trying to establish formal communication with the station's leadership for hours, but Station Commander Reelhan kept responding with what sounded like surrender offers. She was starting to wonder if there was a translation problem. Maybe their language doesn't have the same concept of friendship that we do, suggested Communications Officer Yunji, or maybe they think we're here for some kind of business negotiation. Dr. So Min was having her own problems. She had been trying to share information about Earth's biology with the station's medical staff, but they seemed to think she was describing weapons rather than natural life. Every time she mentioned a normal Earth animal, they reacted like she was talking about a military weapon. I told them about dogs, she said to Captain Hyojin. Friendly, loyal dogs that humans keep as companions. They asked me how we control such dangerous predators, and why we would want to live with creatures that could kill us so easily. Lieutenant Kyung-soo had given up trying to reassure the small, furry aliens who kept fainting when he approached them. Instead, he was helping Engineer Taeho with the station repairs. The work was relaxing and reminded him of home, where fixing things was a normal part of daily life. He didn't notice that their repair work was being recorded and analyzed by military experts from across the galaxy. Every tool they used, every technique they employed, and every safety precaution they ignored was being studied as potential intelligence about human warfare. Capabilities. They're terraforming the station, reported security analyst Drakmore to the Galactic Council. They're modifying the environment to make it more suitable for their species. This was not entirely wrong. The humans were making improvements to the life support system, fixing broken equipment and cleaning up areas that had been neglected. But to aliens who were terrified of change, any modification looked like preparation for invasion. Engineer Taeho had found the station's main power generator and immediately saw several ways to improve its efficiency. The current setup was wasteful and put unnecessary stress on the components. With a few simple modifications, he could increase the power output by 30%, while reducing the risk of dangerous overloads. Mind if I optimize this? He asked maintenance worker Pickwall, who was watching him work. Pickwall didn't understand most of the human's words, but he recognized the tone as a polite request. He nodded, not knowing that he was giving permission for changes that would make the station's power system more advanced than anything his people had ever built. Dr. Somin had started analyzing the station's biological waste management system. As a biologist, she could see that it was inefficient and potentially harmful to the environment. Earth had faced similar problems centuries ago, and humans had developed better solutions. Your bacterial processing is working against itself, she explained to environmental engineer Lisahara. If you adjust the pH balance and add these microorganisms, you'll get much better results with less energy waste. Lisahara looked at the organisms that Somin was showing her. According to the scanner, they were aggressive, adaptable life forms that could consume almost any organic material. To a species that was afraid of biological contamination, they looked like the perfect weapon for destroying an ecosystem. She's going to poison our entire waste system, Lisahara reported to her supervisors. Once those organisms spread, they could consume everything organic on the station. Ambassador Dong Hyun was reviewing the station's legal and trade databases, trying to understand how galactic commerce worked. The systems were very different from Earth's methods, but he was confident that humans could adapt and find beneficial arrangements for everyone. His research was being monitored by economic analyst Rothwell, who was horrified by what he saw. The human was studying their trade networks with the intensity of a military strategist planning an invasion. He was mapping supply lines, identifying key resources, and analyzing economic weaknesses. "They're planning to take over our entire economy," Rothwell reported to the council. "They're learning how to control our trade routes and resource distribution." The truth was much simpler. Dong Hyun was trying to figure out what humans could offer in trade that would be valuable to aliens, and what alien goods might be useful on Earth. But to creatures who were already terrified, any interest in their economic systems looked like preparation for conquest. As the day progressed, more reports reached the Galactic Council. The humans were modifying station systems, analyzing biological processes, studying trade networks, and demonstrating capabilities that defied all known science. Every friendly gesture was interpreted as a threat. Every helpful action was seen as preparation for domination. Council Prime Zilith gathered her advisors for an emergency strategy session.